Whenever there's some new airport event, there's usually an icebreaker along the lines of, "So, why are you here?" You know, new people almost always will say, "Well, I'm just here to learn." But that's not exactly true, right? I mean, people don't show up for these things like some hobby, right? They're there because they want something to be different, usually the noise and the pollution and so on. They just don't know what is possible. And they go to the event, and especially if it's sponsored by the port, the FAA, it's kind of disappointing. The information is extremely overwhelming. It sounds like, from their point of view, everyone's doing everything that can be done. Not much is possible, and so they quickly cycle away from the whole thing. And that's a shame because, newcomers never stick around long enough to know about previous initiatives that actually did move the ball down the field a good deal. I'm not talking about ancient history here. It just occurred to me today, in 2017, the port created this thing called the ACE Fund, Airport Community Ecology, specifically to deal with things like trees and the environmental impacts around the airport. Great idea, I think we can all agree. Terrible execution. 2022, the port proposed a land stewardship plan. From the name, sounds fantastic. In practice, ridiculous. Just as you can tell, the environmental pieces of airports are a big deal to me, but stick around. For example, in 2024, they rolled out a port package update plan, which thousands of people need. The SIRRPP, as it's called, really rolls off the tongue. Well, the results, spoiler alert, I think you can see there's a pattern here. Every few years, the port really does roll out something new to respond to community concerns. It sounds great. There are press releases and photo ops. I've been in these, but the implementation is always... The real problem isn't just that you don't know about those things. The real problem is that you don't see that pattern. People don't have a chance to learn about things like ACE before throwing in the towel, even though that program only ended in 2022. I mean, that's only 3 years ago. Now, in my world, software, there's a version 1, and maybe you find some bugs, and you fix them, and you put out updates, and everybody's happy. That doesn't happen on airport issues. Over and over again. Typically, you only get one chance, and the results are, well, not memorable. The big lie that everyone tells you when you're working on these things and you're so enthusiastic, don't worry, if we don't get it right now, we'll fix it, we'll roll out updates, and it'll be fine. And you're so flattered to be getting something done, you don't realize. Not true. That's why STNI is always banging on about being specific, hold people to account to get the right legislation the first time. And if you're having trouble thinking about what you want, you could do a lot worse than to simply take a look at what the port and legislators have already gotten to work on and think of what a version 2 would look like. The one that actually works. That's the good news. You're not starting from ground zero and having to think up all this stuff and climb all the way to the top of Mount Everest. There were people before you, very talented, who wanted the things you want, and they got far enough to prove that these things are not impossible. The funny thing about that ACE Fund, if you go to the port's website today, the pages no longer exist. I mean, why would it? The program was rolled up in 2022, so it's no longer of any value to them. If you can't learn about Rev 1.0 and what was intended, how can you get to version 2? That's why we started STNI, to tell you what has happened and to give you that starting point. We also started STNI to tell you that there's a certain, this is awkward, scammy quality to all of this. Electeds and administrators basically doing some hand-waving at a certain point of time and then, forgetting about it. Normal government, the kind that actually works, could not and does not, thankfully, function that way. You couldn't have roads and parks and water and all that good normal government stuff if you were starting from scratch with a committee every couple of years. But that's exactly what we do regarding airport issues. It's deeply unfortunate that there are so many projects that never got where they're supposed to go. We've lacked continuity, and that's where you come in. There is no shortage of projects for you to work on now that are already at least half the way there. They just need you to learn about version 1 so that we all can finally get to version 2. The one that actually works.